Everybody all set? We're streaming.
I use Steve's. Steve let me use his.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular Board of Selectmen's meeting on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. It's 7 p.m. Before we begin, I'd just like to mention that this past weekend there were some signs posted in town promoting hate speech. This town has no room or tolerance for hate speech or hate groups, and anyone in the community who receives flyers or observes other posters should contact the police department on their non-emergency line or someone at town hall. Town manager at townofwinchester.com will get you in touch with the town manager. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Candace Bouchard.
Jonathan Morehart.
Candy Perez.
Josh Kelly.
Todd Archelashi.
Glenn Albanesius.
Stevens Headlack.
Linda Guapo.
Jack Bork. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda review? No one? All right, moving on to the approval of the minutes from our regular meeting on August 21st.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the August 21st meeting minutes.
Thank you, Candy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Unanimous? Item 5, citizens' comments. The Board of Selectmen welcomes public comments. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less and may speak only once. Seeing no citizens' comments, moving on to item 6, the town manager's report.
Well, that was quick. Good evening, everybody. The first thing that I want to discuss for the first time publicly at one of our meetings is that, as has been reported in the paper, I have submitted my 60 days notice. I submitted that to the Board of Selectmen at our last regular meeting. And I have been actively working over the last few weeks and will continue to work until noontime on October 20th to make sure that a large number of projects that I've been working to oversee and a large number of activities that the town has been undertaking are completed. This is not, so there's still plenty of time. This is not goodbye, and there's no goodbye to be said at this moment, but I do want to say that it was a very difficult decision. I've loved my time here in Winchester, and I'm going to work every last second that I can in the next several weeks to make sure that Winchester's left in as great a spot as possible. Moving forward from here, the Citizens Academy is beginning on Wednesday, September 13th. A little bit of a typo there in what was written. But it is beginning in just a week or so. So if anybody here who is listening, whether it be online or in the audience, actually some of our audience members are going to be helping lead some of our sessions, but we are going to be holding these sessions weekly on Wednesdays between September 13th and the second Wednesday in November. This is a great opportunity for members of the public, free of charge, to come and learn about the ins and outs of town government, everything from getting inside our public works, our water and sewer plants, facilities, to learning more about our police department, straight from our new chief of police, and so much more. So I really encourage you, come on out. Learn a little bit more about the town. There's still spots left, but you do need to register in advance. Please make sure that you do so on or before the first session kicks off on September 13th.
And what is the time?
The time, well, you need to register, so I don't, please register. Don't just show up, but 7 o'clock is the time for each of those sessions. Beyond that, I'm going to, in the interest of time, move through some of these a little bit more quickly. Under the umbrella of economic development, we do have an RFP that's been posted for the Mountainside Drive development. We have 2 other RFPs that are being fielded right now that are part of our Communities Challenge grant given to us by the state of Connecticut, and that's for wayfinding signage around town as well as wayside educational signs. 2 distinctly different projects, though they sound a little similar. Information about those is posted on our website and will circulate in the newspaper this week. Responses for the Mountainside Drive RFP are due back at 9:00 a.m. on September 22nd, 2023. Other RFP responses are due per their posted times on the town's website. The town is currently working to finalize the Brownfields Round 18 grant application, which is, my hope is, will focus on improvements at the parking lot on the corner of Lake and Meadow Streets. We have an understanding that there's some capping that needs to be done, and there's some state money that doesn't require any match that I am hoping to make use of. Parking remains a top priority along Main Street, and having that be capped would be a benefit to all. We are still working on our first-time homebuyer seminar that's been scheduled for Wednesday, October 11th at 6 o'clock p.m. Yes, it's a Wednesday. It'll be right before, for those of you, who are listening at home, who are attending the Citizens Academy, will be able to go to that right beforehand here in this room. We have a number of other postings that have been made on the town's website for jobs. The town is seeking police officers, utility man 3, utility man 4, and maintainer 3. All of these positions have been posted, and if you're interested in applying, please see the town's website. And I'm looking forward to seeing those applications come in. Beyond that, since the board last met, all members of the town staff and Board of Selectmen have been invited to participate in Microsoft Excel training, as well as the training on our website. Both were very well attended and received. I think improvements have been made in both areas by all who attended. I even learned a few things at the Excel training from members of the audience, which was great. Beyond that, we did have conversations most recently with the police union on Friday, August 4th. Unfortunately, the union has indicated to us that it's unable to meet in the entire month of September. October dates are now being considered. Are there any questions from members of the Board of Selectmen at this time?
Candy?
Yeah, at our last meeting, we talked about 10 Bridge Street.
Yep.
And when you were asking, or you're telling us you were giving more money to the steep grant. And one of the comments we made was that we had no information on who the developer is, what it's being developed for, where it's like headed, who actually owns it. And I see it on the agenda down here under 10 New Business D.
Yep.
So we have no, are you gonna be giving us something? I didn't see it in the packet.
I was
miss it?
planning to tell you a little bit more when we get to that item in the agenda,
Okay.
but I wasn't prepared to give it during the manager's report.
Okay.
Could you just briefly explain what you mean by round 17 and round 18 for these brownfield grant applications? Nothing
So
long, just something brief. It's not clear what that means.
no, you're right. So from the town of Winchester's perspective, that number is pretty meaningless. But the state has actually offered out 18 rounds now of different brownfield grants. So as a means of trying to differentiate for you, later in the agenda, as Candy mentioned, we're going to be discussing a grant for 10 Bridge Street and some abatement projects at that site. So that was received by under round 17. We made an application under round 17 last year, or earlier in this year. We received money from round 17 that I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to accept tonight on behalf of the town. But now we're also looking to round 18 to make another application.
But we never were involved with rounds 1 to 16.
Yeah, yes.
We made applications on rounds, I believe we made an application on round 15. We did not submit an application on round 16. And then, which the first, round 15 was a 10 Bridge Street application. We did not submit under round 16. Round 17 we submitted, and that's what we'll discuss tonight. Round 18 is what we're applying for now. Lots of money. And the great thing about this program is that there's no match required.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Other questions? Seeing no other questions, item 7, correspondence. Does anyone have anything?
I would just note that at the back of my manager's report, I guess you could consider it correspondence, I have attached an updated grant report, updated as of August 28th, 2023. So if there are any questions, we've tried to separate everything into very specific categories with what's an active grant, what's a grant that we've received but haven't started spending on, what are grants that we've applied for but haven't yet heard back on. Happy to go over anything you would like in detail, and we'll continue to update this as we have been.
Any questions on that? Other correspondence? Moving on to item 8, Steve, boards and commissions.
Thank you, Todd. We're going to place for consideration name of Ryan Horvey for membership on the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate, we will begin the vetting process for him. And under appointments, the third time for John Noon, so I will move that we appoint John Noon as a member of the Soldiers Monument Commission, term to expire in June of '27.
I'll second. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Unanimous? Congratulations, John.
And for Lynn and Deb Kessler, who are already members of another commission, have been vetted prior to this, we can move right to the appointment stage, and so I will move to appoint Lynn Kessler as a member of the Historic Commission. No term indicated at this point.
I'll second. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Unanimous?
And I will move to to appoint Deborah Kessler as a member of the Historic Commission, no term at this particular point.
I'll second. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jack. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous?
And as usual, we invite the members of the public to get interested in our boards and commissions. We have vacancies in quite a number of boards and commissions: architectural review, assessment appeals, conservation, EDC, Laurel City Commission, Inland Wetlands and Water Course, Rec Board, Zoning Board of Appeals. Some of those are alternates, some of those are regular members, but we invite you to get involved.
Hey, Steve, could we get a breakdown of the composition of all the boards and commissions?
An update?
Yep, like,
Terry should have that, I think, upstairs.
well, how many Rs, Us, and Ds?
She has all that.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in a while.
Okay, we'll do that for the next meeting. That's it, Todd.
Thank you, Steve. Moving on to item 9, unfinished business. Consider and possibly act on the appointment of a 3 selectmen panel to serve on a hiring review committee.
So as was discussed and decided at the last meeting of the Board of Selectmen, there will be a hiring review committee to be composed of at least 3 members of the Board of Selectmen and an additional, up to 2 additional members. That can be from the public if the Board of Selectmen so chooses. So in order to get that meeting scheduled, I would ask that the Board of Selectmen please nominate or volunteer 3 of its members to comprise that group at least until such time as we, until the next election.
I'll volunteer.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you. And Jonathan, Candice? All right, I'll take the 3rd position.
All right.
So we have
The
2 and 1.
reason it's important to start this is because as we switch from Josh, who we knew what he was gonna do, that whoever comes on board next, we wanna make sure that we're all complying with what's in the employee personnel policy that goes for hiring, to make sure we have an established baseline.
Do we need to vote for that?
Todd, you
That'd be
sitting on it?
preferable.
Yes. All in favor of Candy, Linda, and myself serving on the commission? All in favor? Unanimous? And that is 2 Ds, 1 R. New business, 23-57, refunds is recommended by the Collector of Revenues.
We have a small list of repayments that need to be made. Number for certificates of correction, 1 for an overpayment. The total is $941.79, all of which apply to motor vehicles. And I recommend that the refunds be made as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Candace. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Linda. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Item B, consider and possibly act on the approval of a bid waiver to purchase a used vehicle for animal control. Chief, is that microphone? Yes.
Good evening. Is this working? I guess you can hear me,
Is
maybe.
there a light on the bottom?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's lit.
Okay. Well, good evening. The police department is requesting permission to contract with Lumbar Ford on the purchase of a used 2020 Ford Transit Connect van to be used as our animal control vehicle. Sergeant Kinahan did a good job locating a couple vehicles that we looked at, and we decided this one best suits our needs. Alicia Campbell, our animal control officer, looked at it herself, and they're offering us a generous trade-in to the vehicle she's currently using, which is it's a 2014 Ford Interceptor with over 132,000 miles, and its running condition is not that good. So the money was approved in this current year's budget, and we came in under, so there's still room for us to do some markings and outfit it with the radio and lights. So basically, we're looking for a waiver of the town's bidding procedures and approval of the issuance of a purchase order so we can contract and purchase the vehicle.
Questions?
What's the year of the vehicle you're
It's
purchasing?
2020, and it has 68,000 miles on it. And Alicia Campbell, again, she checked with the area towns, and Harwington uses an almost identical vehicle, and they're happy with it, so.
Candy?
I'll make a motion to approve the bid waiver to purchase the used vehicle for animal control.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you, Steve. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous?
All right, thank you.
Item C, 23-58, consider and possibly act on the replacement of parking signs on Main Street.
Don't go too far, chief. Sorry, just in case we have a question for parking signs. Hey, once you're in, we got you.
That's why Jim just puts up his feet, hangs out.
Yeah, Jim knows he's gonna stay the whole time. No, I'm kidding. So, I've greased the wheels, I think, and mentioned to you that there is some work that can be done on parking, and some of us have had the opportunity, I've had the opportunity, I should say, with some of you to have conversations about what would make a good improvement along Main Street when it comes to our short-term parking needs. I think that the largest issue that we have before us is the fact that on Main Street we have a significant number of individuals that park their car after they come home from work, when they come home for the weekend, and those cars never move again. It's causing disruption for the business owners and the individuals who could be making more of a profit if there was more of an opportunity for customers to be coming in and parking along Main Street. And in general, for the sake of our being more business friendly and our seeking greater economic development, it's been my goal over the last 2.5 years to try and come up with some level of solution that will create more parking availability on Main Street. What the chief and I have been discussing is currently in front of the state DOT for review. It has not been approved by the state DOT, nor does it strictly need to be approved by you tonight. And I want to make sure that's clear before conversations begin. But given the fact that the state DOT may take as long as 60 days to consider this change and whether or not it would be permitted or permissible, their recommendation to us is that it be a concurrent review, both by you as the town's legislative body and then by their offices from really a traffic management standpoint. The proposal that the chief and I have put in front of the state DOT is to very simply remove all the signs from Main Street that say 1 hour parking or 2 hour parking and replace each instance of those signs with a sign that says no parking between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. This would first necessitate that all cars be off the road every night. It would require that anybody who's interested in simply parking their car and leaving it overnight without moving it again, take their car off of Main Street and seek alternative parking, hopefully the parking that is actually assigned to their dwelling unit instead of something that's conveniently in front of the building where they live. It would also make it more easily enforceable by our police department instead of having to monitor cars' locations and times over the course of 1 or 2 hours, depending on the spot. Anybody who's parking between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. is going to be subject to tagging and towing at a certain point in time. So it makes it more enforceable. It certainly gets more cars off of Main Street, which is a better thing for our business community. It would also clear the street for 3 hours a day year-round, which would allow, I imagine, for more effective snow clearing, and hopefully require us to lessen the time that we need to have parking bans, which I know has been a particular issue for many of our business owners. And Main Street visitors wouldn't be limited to just visiting businesses for an hour or two. Whether, I know that there's been a question of whether this has been enforced in the past, and anybody who's local knows that they can probably get away with parking for more than 2 hours without any issue. Anybody who's trying to travel here and learning more about our town is probably pretty nervous about the signs that they see when they roll up. Now they'd have an opportunity to go to the Gilson and have dinner at the same time instead in one parking place instead of being nervous about what might happen to their vehicle. So for all of these reasons, and I imagine more, this is our recommendation that these signs be switched out. It's not a long-term, permanent, perfect solution that we have developed here related to parking, but I do believe that it will create a greater number of parking spaces while being of no impact to the town's budget, whereas our other solutions have required large investments. If this is approved by both the Board of Selectmen and State DOT, we have been assured by State DOT that the signs would be procured and placed by their crews, so it would not impact our operations or budget. At this point, I leave it to you as the Board of Selectmen to ask questions or to have the conversation that you feel you need. Again, understanding that CTDOT has not completed their review, and you could table this to a subsequent meeting if you required more time.
Candy?
Josh, could you just, for the public, explain where people that live on Main Street could park? Because I know that some of the buildings have their own parking lot, you know, parallel with Main Street, but could you talk about the municipal lots that we would be telling people that they could park in overnight?
Yeah. So I actually think it's primarily important to emphasize the fact that there are parking spots and there are parking lots and driveways that are underutilized or unused by their tenants. So encouraging them to get off of Main Street and to go back to their assigned parking strips, I think is the most important and the most helpful way to move some of these issues along. But beyond that, Candy's right. There are a number of municipal parking lots that are completely unused from the hours of 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. and that I see no issue opening up to the public for overnight parking to an extent. First is over at 44 Elm Street. We have a parking lot over next to our fire department's building on Elm Street as well. We have the municipal lot at the corner of Lake Street and Meadow Street, which is the subject of one of the grants that I'm hoping to apply for so that it can be paved more effectively. So across town, there are a number of areas where these cars can go that would make it more reasonable and to an extent safer and more profitable for our businesses on Main Street, for individuals who are frequenting those businesses to park on Main Street, and for individuals who are residents of the area to park a little bit further away and walk to their building.
Other questions? Linda?
Have the businesses been advised of this, what your plan is?
No. So my request, if you're interested in pursuing this, of course, if you tell us tonight that you're not interested in pursuing this, we would withdraw our request to the DOT. If you are interested in pursuing this, we would inform DOT of your determination, and we would also, I believe per DOT requirements, we have to inform all of the residents along Main Street anyways, and all the business owners. So at that point in time, we would send out notifications and receive feedback, or it could simply be a directive of yours tonight that we seek that input before determinations made by the Board of Selectmen.
You know, thinking about this, the Main Street will be full throughout the business hours. There could be people visiting the businesses, or it could be the tenants. The only time it's going to be empty is from 2 to 5 in the morning. I don't see how it's helping the businesses at all. And you said in your explanation here that the streets would be clear for cleaning. I thought Main Street was a state road and the state cleans. I can't imagine the state coming out between 2 and 5 to clean Main Street. I'm just not comfortable with this, especially if you haven't approached the businesses with this idea.
Well, one of the things that it'll do is if you can't park there overnight, then the tenants will have to park somewhere else. And the hope is that if they have to park somewhere else when they get home at 5 o'clock, they go back behind the building, because on that stretch of Main Street between Elm and Union, that there's a parking lot in the back where they have assigned spaces, that they'll go back there, so they don't have to get up in the middle of the night to move the car, and that'll open up some spaces for the restaurants that are on Main Street, because you can't park there.
So what about the west end, and that's where, you know, the tractor trailer is, that's there. I'm just wondering.
It's only the, it's not the riverside. It's only
It's
the
not-
retail side. It's the north side of Main Street, not the riverside. There are no signs on
No,
it.
actually, there are some signs on the
There
far
are.
side.
And where does it begin and where does it end on Main Street, those signs?
I'd be happy to give you a map. The majority of Main Street is covered by these signs. In some cases, it's 1 hour. In some cases, it's 2 hour. But on the retail side, I believe it is the entire length of Main Street from, I mean, you're talking from East End Park up through,
Library.
yeah, at least past the library, if not maybe even a little bit further. And on the riverside, I know for a fact that right across the street here, and I'll be the first one to say it even in front of the chief, my car's parked there all the time. I think the whole town probably knows that I'm parked there. The reality is that there isn't enough, I mean, there's a need to use the parking that's on Main Street for longer than 2 hours at certain points in time during the business day. But also, there's a need to get the cars off of Main Street that are going to be there during your prime time hours, which I would say are primarily between 3 and 9 p.m. If we can stop individuals who are coming home from work from parking on Main Street in the first place and have them park in a more suitable area when they come home without the need to move their vehicles, in that prime time when most businesses are being frequented, we're going to have a greater expanded opportunity for especially our restaurants, but other businesses in general, to be frequented by.
So why was 2 a.m.
Patrons.
selected?
So 2 a.m. was selected. I actually didn't know this, but the chief informed me that if you possess a liquor license, is this correct? You're permitted to be open until 2 a.m.?
On Saturdays.
On Saturdays.
Fridays and Saturdays.
Okay. So, but that's basically the latest that a business could be open in Winchester. And 5 a.m. I know is the time that Aces opens, and I believe that's the first business to open on Main Street in the morning. So that's why 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. was selected as a time. It makes it a small little window, but a perfect window and opportunity for police officers to be going up and down Main Street enforcing, which right now they really don't have the capacity or the opportunity to enforce. And that's more a reality of our budget and the way that we've invested in the police department rather than the way that the rules are written. But this gives them a greater expanded capacity to make that happen.
So, Jack?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Linda. The move to remove the signs that say 1 hour or 2 hours, I don't have any difficulty with that. And to Candy's point about, well, people come home and they can't park there overnight, they'll go park someplace else. I don't know, if I was there, I'd probably park close to my apartment and go in and be right in front of a store that's doing business at that time. It seems to me that we're not really helping the business people between their most productive hours, between 5 and 9 o'clock especially. I mean, you go down by Mario's or that end of town, there's just, on a Friday or Saturday night, there's no parking at all available from one end of town to the other. I'm not so sure that this accomplishes the goal that we want to do to help the business people and allow space for patrons that are going into the restaurants or the businesses. It doesn't make a lot of sense in my way of thinking about how one would come home and, oh yeah, I better park in the parking lot and then walk up and stay there all night and then I don't have to move it again. I think people get kind of complacent and they park wherever they want, and maybe they'll get up at 9 o'clock and move the car. But in the meantime, they've taken parking spots from people who could be patrons of the stores. I'd like to see some other discussion about this, but I'm not so sure that
What
this
would you
is.
suggest then to solve that problem? Because you know, if you make a 2-hour or a 3-hour parking limit, you can't, we don't have the personnel to
I'm not
enforce that.
talking about limiting the time to park. I would,
But how
I would
else would you
remove the.
move, how else would you open up a space?
Well, I'd like to have some other discussion about, I'm saying on this proposal, I don't know if this works the way we would like it to work. And if we put up the signs now, and let's say the state says, okay, we'll do it, and then, I don't know, 6 months from now, we say, that doesn't work, we're gonna find something else. State's not gonna come around and say, well, we'll change the signs again. I'd just like to see some other alternatives, but
I think it's
to
a
me-
good,
to
I think
me-
it's a good first step, and this is why I say that. You have to change the habit. You have to change the habit. It's not fair. You can't open up businesses on Main Street when there's no parking. You really have to. We're not gonna solve the problem, but you have to take one step. We also are applying for redesigning Main Street. Once that occurs, we can do something. We can't enforce anything right now. This is the only opportunity we have to enforce it and try and change habits. It's just a first step. You can always change this. This is not set in stone. It will be, you know. But I think it's a good first step.
You
It's
really-
not what I want. I want lines. I want parking spaces. I want areas for all the businesses that have restaurants to have a designated area for pickup and drop off. They don't have that now, but we can't enforce what we have, and this is the only thing we can enforce, like,
You
as a
think
first
this is a
step.
motivator to keep people from parking?
No, nothing's gonna motivate people other than getting a ticket. Reality.
And that's really what I was going to say. I think you hit it right on the head, Candace. Right now, I hate to put it this way, but we just don't have the capacity to enforce the rules that are on Main Street. I don't want to do this, but I'm sure if we ask the chief to pull out all of the parking tickets that have been given on Main Street, you could probably count the number in the last few years on 1 or 2 hands. The reality is we need to have rules that can be enforced. And I think that this is a far better step and a far better attempt than has been tried, at least in the last few years, with the current rules that are in effect. And there's no harm. Simply a meeting of this board to say, you know what, we tried it for a month, 2 months, however long it is, and it didn't work. Let's go back, would undo it. This is no ordinance. It doesn't require 3 meetings. It doesn't require any particular change. It really just requires the blessing of DOT and this body. But beyond that, I absolutely agree. We should contact the business owners. We should contact the residents, and that is a part of this process. It's just a question of in which order you'd like to take it. So we wanted to present the idea to you. But if the next step is, you know, Chief and Josh, you have to go out and you have to get some information, bring it back to our next meeting so that we can make a bit more of an educated decision, we will absolutely do that.
Could we change the time from 2 to maybe start at 1? Since you say it doesn't make much difference.
I was
Trying to be as business friendly as possible, right?
The idea is to not hit the businesses, so like if you put in 2 or 3 hour parking and there's a musician at Second Home, you know, you're there for sometimes 4 hours. And then you don't wanna hit somebody, that's open until 2 AM and have people move for that. I mean, you don't wanna hit anybody early in the morning. The idea is to try to make a couple more spaces. I've literally looked for a parking space to go to New James. And I've parked down the street, and I go to New James. There's nobody or 2 people in there.
Right.
There's nobody else in any of the storefronts that are there. And so if people are gonna shop there, or if they're gonna wanna go to Winston News or during the day, Rooted Market is a perfect example. You know, trying to get into Rooted Market and a parking space on Main Street is very difficult. You know, where they were before, it was a lot easier because there was no residential upstairs. But if you look at certain blocks, there is a lot of residential. In other cities and towns, what they do is they have people have parking permits. You know, they require parking permits, you know, because whoever owns the building is responsible for parking of their tenants. And somehow the town has become responsible for parking of tenants, in my opinion. Like, I have to have my cars in my driveway, off the road. You know, when we used to have the parking ban overnight, everybody had to get their cars off the road into their driveways, onto their lawn, or wherever it is. In Torrington, they still have an overnight parking ban in the winter, and you have to be off of the road. at night. You just, wherever you are, if you own your house, you're off the road. If you're a tenant, you're off the road. And the building owners provide that. Right now, the town is providing the parking on Main Street. At least that's what I see. And if there was no other place to go, then that would be different. But if you remember the firehouse, on the side of the firehouse is all municipal parking lot.
Both
know-
sides,
Huh?
both sides.
And on the side of where the businesses are, that was a municipal parking lot that we traded with that building a long time ago. Then that agreement ran out, so that building got those parking areas closest to the building on Elm Street back. So the building owners own that front parking lot, and we have the one behind it. And then if you go over to, like you said, Bank of America, and then right next to Bank of America, we have another parking lot. That's a town. So we do have places for people to park. It's not like we're just saying, hey, sorry, no parking at all. There are places to park to be able to help the Main Street businesses and people that want to go there. Because if the Main Street businesses don't survive, they don't pay taxes. If they don't pay taxes, then where's the money gonna come from to sustain, our operations and things that we have to do? And we've heard at this table, when people come in, the business owners come in and tell us they want to fix parking, they want us to do that. Well, we know that to do the diagonal in is what? It's gonna be like $8 million, like maybe.
I mean, 400 just to do a study for DOT.
Yeah, it's DOT 400, we know the medians, I mean, it's just really expensive, so, what little tools do we have to move the needle a little bit?
Well, based upon what you're saying, and Candace, you're saying this is just a beginning of getting some kind of changes made,
Culture change.
culture, attitude about parking and where you're parking your,
And the owners of the buildings.
yeah.
It's a reminder.
But we're doing this only on Main Street?
That's the proposal right now. I think it's a pilot, right? We need to find out if it works. We need to find out how effective it is. We need to find out if the business owners find it to be effective themselves. It's one thing to drive down Main Street and say, oh, I see a lot of cars. Maybe it's a little too crowded. It's another thing to say, how's your business doing? Is it better or worse? And the only way you can actually find some of these things out is to give it a try.
I wouldn't oppose moving the proposal forward. I'm a little skeptical, though, about the number of vehicles. Do we have any idea about how many vehicles park overnight on Main Street?
I can answer that. As someone who's up very early in the morning, especially after snowstorms, there's sometimes 25, 30 cars that are covered with snow on Main Street at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Is
So,
that on both sides
so
or
my
one side?
Both sides.
concern is, where do those 25 or so cars go? They don't all go to the municipal parking lot.
Well, there's plenty of space back there. There's space back there, there's space at Bank of America.
Union Street, Elm Street, you can park on the streets.
Yeah, no, you're asking people to park and walk quite a way to their dwelling. If that's, some people will come forward and tell us that, I'm sure. But I think we've got to do something, and this is, if we think in terms of it's a pilot, then I would be in favor of it.
Other questions? All right, do we have a motion, or do we want to table this till we get more information from the state?
I would like Josh to send a letter out to, and we had talked about this before, sending a letter out to all the building owners on Main Street that were considering it.
Let them know ahead of time.
Yep.
How about
And then-
include that to the businesses and get their,
And then at the next meeting, then he'll get back what they think, and then we can move from there.
That's
We
fair.
vote tomorrow.
thank you.
That's fair. That's a knowledge-based decision then.
Moving on, item D. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
23-59, consider and possibly act on a resolution accepting 10 Bridge Street, Brownfield Round 17 grant funds.
All right, so let me tell you a little bit about 10 Bridge. So we have been working with, we've heard from out over the last year or so a developer by the name of Bill Kraus, who served on the State Historic Commission, who has been very active and involved in the southwestern corner of the state with specifically the preservation and restoration of old historic buildings, and successfully too. Bill Kraus is very interested in 10 Bridge Street, building number 1. He has been working and has a purchase and sale agreement signed with the current owners of 10 Bridge Street, and it is pending an amount of environmental work to be done. They have completed a phase 1 environmental review. They've completed a phase 2. This grant is going to cover a phase 3 as well as a certain level of environmental remediation. That's what the $128,500 grant in front of you is for. And this is a DECD Brownfields grant. It does not require any match at all from the municipality. It does not require any signed agreements between ourselves and the private developer. It just requires the state to have a signed agreement with the private developer and the state to have a resolution from the Board of Selectmen recognizing that it accepts the financial boon, the grant from the state on the private developer's behalf. Then as the work is done, we, with the state, work to distribute that and disperse it to the private developer. So the developer, Bill Kraus and Associates, is looking to move forward with specifically a certain type of market rate housing. It's 55 units that they expect to have in that building on floors 2 through 5. And on the first floor, they hope to have either a restaurant or a level of retail available. This is a work in progress. The good news is that the first floor, they've done all of the engineering that they need. The first floor is 100% out of the floodplain, so they have more options and opportunities as to what to do with the first floor. You can't have residential units within the floodplain. So there has been a little conversation about making use of the first floor of the building as residential instead of retail or a restaurant. But there are a lot of benefits to having it be mixed use to some extent. I have heard, unfortunately, the developer that we've been working with, his wife recently had a bit of a health problem that she's been dealing with, and he's been tending to that. And we've been moving a little bit slower in the last month or two, but his intention is by the end of October to have his plans in before the Planning and Zoning Commission. In order to proceed with the plans as he's presented them, he does need a level of support. We have applied for and received this $128,500 grant from DECD, or been awarded it, I should say. In order to receive it, we need to have a resolution which is attached, passed by the Board of Selectmen. So this does not commit the Board of Selectmen to any amount of town money to support the project. This does not require the Board of Selectmen to enter into any other further agreement or further grant with this developer. And as a part of the agreement, I have made sure we have commitments from the developer that any documents that are developed as part of this work, such as a phase 3 environmental review, would be submitted to our land use office and kept on the record for any future developer at that site. So even if Bill Kraus were to walk away tomorrow, as long as he completes the work as outlined in here, it will be turned over to us and we will have the documents on file to help the next developer move forward. We've already done that with the phase 2. When this project started, we did not have the phase 2 review completed on this site. We now have it, and that's thanks to his willingness to cooperate with us, put it on the files in our land records, and move forward. So I believe that this is a great investment of our time and attention. I understand that there are some questions and hesitations about committing any further money that could be going to other municipal projects. We had that conversation about the STEEP grant at the last meeting, but this is a perfect example of the type of brownfield that the state wants to see remediated. It's really important for our economic development that we continue to invest in healthy housing in the downtown area, which is exactly what Bill Kraus is trying to accomplish. And it's no skin off our backs as far as local taxpayers to pursue this state grant and invest in the vision that Bill Kraus has. So I ask that you approve the resolution as attached.
Questions? Jack?
So Josh, we get $128,000, $128,500. How do we piecemeal that out? Or are we gonna give it to them all at one time? And how do we evaluate the work that has been done to get a little bit of that. As you say, something could change, he may not be able to finish. First, I want to be sure we're not giving the whole thing out at one time.
Nope.
And then, who's doing the evaluation of the environmental and other planned reviews? Whose responsibility is that? The land use office? Who makes the decision that a portion of that grant can now be given over?
The state has very strict guidelines about how the money's to be dispensed and dispersed. I can't sit here and tell you every last requirement that the state has and
It's
the
not done by
regulations
the
that they have.
town. When we did 32 Lake Street, it's not done by the town.
Right. The state has a tremendous amount of oversight into this process. At no point in time is our land use office going to say, give it the rubber stamp.
Is
and
the
move
money
along.
coming into the town, or is it being held by the state until he applies for reimbursement of some expenses?
My understanding is that the town is holding the money in trust. The state is authorizing its disbursement to the private developer. So it would be held within our Fund 15 accounts, just like any other grant.
So any developer there,
Yep.
if they do some work on the environmental and other planned reviews,
Yep.
as you say in here, they have to then go to the state to get that money released from our fund balance. Well, we wouldn't have it in the fund balance, but
I may be
wherever we're
wrong,
holding
but
it.
that's my understanding, is that it's a joint accounting between the state and the town.
Is that keeping with what we've done before on
Yes.
stuff like this?
Yep.
We've done it multiple times in many different properties throughout the town for all of our buildings.
Well, that site is it's such a difficult site, and, we've had so many people take a look at it, start there, and then not be able to finish it. We don't want to be in a situation where we have, something started and money given out to them, and then not being completed.
Well, that's the same situation with 32 Lake Street over the history. But what we found out when we were doing 32 Lake Street is that there was one piece that was not resolved, and that was a hazmat. I don't remember if brownfields was used for that, because I know we use brownfields on other buildings. It might have even been Whiting Street or others that I'm not aware of. But we thought that we could knock it down, but you'd be spreading, there was one element that wasn't done. So this grant, or the steep grant that we got for it, wasn't a brownfield grant. The steep grant that we got for it was to do that final testing so it could be used again, otherwise. But the brownfields were used in other buildings in town before this. We used to have a revolving one. We had a gentleman that would come in front of the board and explain the whole process. He had his own business. I can't remember it, but this is,
Big
I
blonde
remember
hair.
some of that, yeah.
pardon?
Big blonde hair.
We've done
Yeah,
it over
yeah.
the years, many times, yeah.
No, this is not an uncommon way for the state to account for its own money. They have a whole division that's dedicated to brownfields at DECD towards remediating these old sites. And no one has ever made it as far as Bill Kraus has. We have never gotten to the point where there's been a phase 2 or a phase 3. We've never gotten to the point where remediation's actually happening on the site. All of this before he's actually even technically purchased it. So I am very optimistic. Bill has been a wonderful partner, somebody who I know has the vision, has the means, has the knowledge, and the past experience to make this happen. But he needs some investment. And if we're going to invest, why don't we take the opportunity to take a state grant that requires no match? And let's see where his vision takes the site.
No, Mike, I have no difficulty with what we're doing. I just have a question about how it's parceled out.
Understood.
It's almost like having asbestos removal in your home. Like, you have to send tests out. It has to be tested to be verified. So it has to be verified some way. And you have to use state agencies to test, that it's in compliance
Yeah.
with the state regulations.
And once it's awarded, there's no time limit on, like, if this money is here, does it have to be spent by 2025 or?
Honestly, I'm not sure if there's a time limit, mostly because these brownfield grants usually get spent very quickly because the work is ready to be done now. I mean, it's, for lack of a better word, it's shovel ready. As soon as the money's available, he's gonna make use of it and get the work done.
All right.
My
This isn't something that's gonna go on for years.
And that documentation stays with the land?
Yes, so we will have all of those records, we
So
already have the
if
records.
Bill goes,
Yeah.
whatever, it's still a test on that piece of property in our records that was completed. So
Right.
it's not like they take it with them. They don't own it, we own it.
Right, I get that, and I
Oh,
want to make
okay.
sure we all hear that, yes.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking the same thing when you said you know Bill Kraus, and you know his vision and you know his work. That's nice, but this has to be put over here on the land, because if he goes
Oh, absolutely.
sayonara, that,
Well, and that's why I said everything I did before, right? He's already been a good partner in that he's been giving us the records that he's been generating for the land. It's staying on our land records, and he's already committed to making sure that anything that's generated from this grant is also going to be shared on the land records.
He's still
Exactly
gotta
what's
come
said.
up with 55 to 100 parking spaces.
but you said market rate.
That's his goal. That is the discussion that he and I have had, is market rate housing. That doesn't mean it's going to be the goal when he crosses the finish line. But right now, that's full steam ahead what he's working towards.
So when we go to give other grants, we can then make them predicated on market rate.
You can choose to do that, but if he comes to you with a request for some grant approval for affordable housing, you might be killing that site as far as a possible development goes. It's something to consider, I agree. But it's, might put the site in a difficult spot depending on how he moves forward.
Well, I mean, I just think that when somebody comes to use state money, which is still our taxpayer money, that they're very clear about what it is they want to do, right? Because they don't even own the building yet. He has a purchase agreement for it, but he doesn't own it. It's not like he's, in for, I mean, he's got his time in there, whatever time he spends on plans.
And some money.
Yeah, so, I think it's just, we've learned too many times, we've had too many examples, or I've had too many examples where people say one thing and then it takes forever or it doesn't happen, and then we end up in some little quagmire later on. So I think when we ask all these questions ahead of time and make sure that we have stipulations in there, that it's important, because we've learned a lot of things. And so, when we say market rate, that makes us all think, okay, that would be good. It would be good for business on Main Street, it would be good for people to live near Main Street, for all of that. So I think those parts are important. For them, for the developers to be upfront with us and then not go and change a whole lot later, because if their homework is done ahead of time, then they should sort of kind of know where they're headed.
Yeah, seeking that consistency is so important, as we've seen it.
So my one question, Josh, is, okay, we accept this offer of the grant. We start doing the work. Next week, Bill Cross leaves. Do we, as a town, continue to spend this 128 to finish the work?
No, it's contingent on his being there.
So it is sort of tied to him?
Yep.
Okay.
This
the property.
grant is the materials that come from it. So if they finish a phase 3 environmental report and then Bill says, you know what, I don't want to do any of the remediation work, I'm out. We keep the documents that are created. We give the rest of the money back to DECD and we walk away.
Okay.
That's what happens.
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the attached resolution as presented.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous? Item E, 23-60, consider and possibly act on the adoption of amendments to the driveway ordinance. Josh?
All right, so we have some information included in your packet that outlines much of what I'm going to say here. But as the Board of Selectmen has seen over the last several meetings, there is a significant inefficiency within our driveway ordinance, where it's very difficult, if not impossible, for many driveways in town to meet the standards of the current driveway ordinance. And the variance process puts the question in front of you as a Board of Selectmen, as a legislative body, and as a financial authority, instead of in the hands of someone who oversees land use regulations, such as our Planning and Zoning Commission. So the proposal in front of you tonight, and this is just meeting 1 of 3, I recommend that you move it forward for further consideration to a second meeting, but there's no final action being taken here. So moving it forward does not require you to later adopt any proposed changes. But the proposal in front of you is to remove chapter 222, which is the driveway ordinance, delete it from the code of ordinances as the Planning and Zoning Commission works to adopt new driveway regulations that have been hammered out ad nauseum over months and months, if not a year at this point, to make sure that it's going to be just right. It puts the variance process and procedure and the whole total, really purview of this set of regulations in the hands of our Planning and Zoning Commission. It takes it out of the hands of the Board of Selectmen as the legislative and financial authority, and it makes improvements to the requirements that all of our driveways have to go through so that it's more reasonable, more universally applicable, and overall a better and more applicable regulation. This has been now reviewed by Kevin Nelligan. I'm not sure if this draft that's in front of you tonight is now the most up-to-date version. I will make sure before you proceed that you have a final draft that is being considered for adoption by Planning and Zoning. And it is my recommendation that no changes be made to the ordinances until such a time as you've confirmed with Planning and Zoning and their chair, George Clausen, that they are taking action to adopt the new regulation as presented. Obviously, this is a little delicate because you don't want to have any period of time where you have no regulations. You need to have one start and the next one, or one stop and the next one seamlessly start in its place. Certainly, language can be added to any motion, whether it be from this body or from the Planning and Zoning Commission, to ensure that that is a smooth transition. But I think you'll all agree that the current driveway ordinance is not something that's working for the town, for staff, or for the Board of Selectmen. And the regulations that are presented to you today are much more refined. And Jim's here to answer questions if you see fit, and I'm happy to answer as many as I can.
Jim, in the penalties and enforcement, it looks like you don't have any more say in this. It looks like it's all with Planning and Zoning Commission. They're the enforcement officers, not you.
Planning and zoning is the agency of enforcement. It typically will work like, so if someone comes in for a driveway permit, goes to the planning and zoning, or it enters through the online portal in the building department where they screen it and vet it and make sure it's, they look at the plan and say, yes, all this needs wetlands, so you have to go to wetlands or whatever. So then I'm in charge, I'm the responsible person for overseeing the part of the driveway that lies in the public right-of-way, that deals with the public right-of-way. So from the edge of the road to what's called the street line, or the property line where the property meets the street.
Jim, can you come up to the mic? They can't hear you on the TV.
Yeah, we had all this discussion with that other driveway on East Wakefield Boulevard. I just wanted to make sure that you are not being left off of this, because what it says is just planning and zoning, and that you still have a right to.
Yeah, within that document, you'll see the areas that are under my purview, and essentially, as they're going through the permitting process, they can't issue a permit until they get a check mark from me saying that it meets all of my needs and all of the ordinance requirements within the right-of-way. And then they look at it from a land use perspective, which is what they're set up to do.
Right.
I'm set up to do with, roads. So that was part of the big problem with the current ordinance, is everything was in my purview, and it doesn't make any reference to other permits, other issues, and it just hovers. I don't know what they want, on the property, how much parking, how much impermeable surfaces. They take all that into account, and they leave the part in the roadway to me. And then, should there be a conflict, the ZBA would be the appeals board. So there's always gotta be somebody that you can appeal to. So it used to be, I made all the decisions,
Yeah,
they didn't like it, they came to you.
Came to us.
So you had me deciding stuff that was land use, and you deciding stuff that was land use. I'm not a land use guy, you're not a land use board. It was just poorly executed. This is in the hands of land use, people, and should there be a conflict, it goes to another land use board to be resolved.
I know we had some discussion after the previous East Wakefield Boulevard driveway, and you said that they have been working on this for some time, planning and zoning,
Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've been making notes on the poor document for the 8.5 years that I've been here. And then when the Board of Selectmen went through their ordinances to make them legal, that really kicked up the volume to say, hey, this ordinance is awful. You know, how can we make it better? And then I started working with Land Use Board, because it was obvious to me the problem was there was land use issues that I wasn't, really qualified to handle. And they weren't really qualified to do the stuff in the road. So over a number of years, we've gotten to this point, and essentially the last 6 months, we've really been, pushing it pretty hard. And it's been, the draft that I last sent you had been looked at that was the final comments of the last meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it went to Nelligan, his reviews. So everybody's latest input is in the document that you guys have.
So it's just the final polish that's needed for the.
Yeah, and not to say there won't be a few things that change, like percents and slopes and distances, like little tweaky things, but all policy stuff is essentially there.
We really can't remove the ordinance until this has been approved officially by planning and zoning.
Yes, but this is a long process. Their process is much shorter, so and that's why it's on your agenda tonight. I hope that you'll move it forward to a second meeting for consideration. There's nothing to stop you from going to a fourth, fifth, or sixth meeting if you find out that planning and zoning has stalled for some reason. But to move towards getting 3 meetings under your belt so you have the option to adopt it at your leisure, I think is important. And also to get public feedback. That's what the 3 meetings are about. Starting that process sooner rather than later, I think, is always a positive thing.
Other questions? Candace?
I don't see how this is a public meeting. We haven't legally notified, we have no legal notice. It's a public meeting. It's not identified as a public meeting in our agenda. So I say that tonight's meeting is not a public meeting. You have to have 3 after this.
So the way that we've been moving through the ordinances in general, you have first it's noticed on the agenda. After this, moving towards the second meeting, we put a notice out. Actually, we have for the larger changes been putting notices in the newspaper, even though we don't have to make sure that we're all covered. And we've been posting those notices online for the subsequent meetings. But the first meeting where it's discussed, there's nothing in the charter that says that it has to be noticed online. It has to be noticed online, I believe it's at least 15 days before the adoption goes into effect, which is why between the first and second meeting makes it the perfect time to get that first notice in.
Yeah, the first step is just to consider it, and then
Yep.
as it moves along, then it has to be noticed.
Yep. So if this does move.
You know what would be really helpful, and we've asked for this before, is Lori Bissett used to, every time we had an ordinance change, she used to attach that sheet to it that said step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. And I'd have to go back through my notes and find it somewhere, but it would be really great to get in the habit of whenever there's an ordinance change to attach that document so that we all can sit here and look at the same thing.
And the codified charter is wrong, so we have to get that corrected.
Yes.
So I had heard that comment before, and I took a look at the section that was made known to me, and there was nothing incorrect that came up on my end. I went through word for word. But I am interested in looking.
The PDF that we have of the charter is correct, but section 303 in the codified version is the old
But you corrected
piece.
that. You said you were gonna call them and correct that.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
right.
Oh, I saw it very recently, so maybe I have to clean out my cache or something, I don't know. I mean, I looked at it
I
today.
doubt it.
If you downloaded an old copy, that's
Yeah,
probably
you-
what you're
He
opening.
was supposed to call and fix that.
Pardon?
He was supposed to call general code.
Oh, I
after
think
you
I
had
looked at
mentioned
it
But I called
today,
general code, so,
yesterday.
and I went through it on
All right.
Wednesday, I believe, with them, and it was verbatim. So let me look
Okay.
again.
Candy, you opening it?
Yeah, well,
Oh, I was gonna open it on my phone.
You know, right, I may have just gone to the PDF this time, because I assumed the other one was still wrong.
Maybe.
So it may not have, it may have been corrected. I looked at the PDF, because I knew it was right, so, you're right. I don't know that one has
The
been.
charter hasn't been changed since the code of ordinances and the charter went off to general code to be processed. So I don't know how they would have gotten the old language in the first place.
I know, it was weird. But that's happened before, where we didn't even put up the revised.
it's not right now. It's still not right. section 303 is still wrong. Doesn't match the paper copy of the charter, so it's right here. You don't have to.
I'm usually right.
I don't think they must have understood you. See, it's over here too.
Maybe not, or maybe I was looking at an old copy and that's why it matched up verbatim.
Well, if you look at the PDF that the town clerk posted, that's correct. So this is where it goes to the web version.
Right.
Posting on the web.
Yeah, so if you go under
Just
government,
web version
and you
translation
go
issues.
under, I believe it was under Board of Selectmen, and then you go under.
Or town clerk.
Charter. No, that was gonna take me to the same place. There's another place that,
Town clerk.
huh?
She's in town clerk?
No, no.
Oh,
Oh, I thought.
town clerk has the PDF, that's correct, and then
Here it is.
Lake Town
then there's the
Charter.
codification.
Yeah, this is the one.
There you go. Okay.
So if you go to this one, which was the one that was adopted, published on the town's website, this is correct. And
Okay.
this was, what year was it?
2019, right?
Whenever we approved it, the town approved it, so
I thought the most recent one was 2019. Okay.
we can go back to 1960 if you want.
Let's not do that.
So there you are.
Any further discussion on item 23-60?
I move that the Board of Selectmen recognize this as the first of 3 public meetings where a revision to ordinance number 222 must be discussed, and that the revision of this ordinance be referred to the next meeting for the second step in the revision process.
Is there a second? Jeff?
Can I amend that to also send to planning and zoning?
Sure.
Okay, Jack, still got the second? Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Item F, consider and possibly act on the motion for abatement of nuisance at 102 Williams Avenue. Josh?
Well, actually, I'm going to turn this over to Jim, and thank you for being here tonight, Jim.
So at 102 Williams Avenue, there's a giant ash tree. And about 3 years ago, it was brought to my attention. So we mailed them, the owner, you know, a hazard tree letter stating that it was their responsibility to abate the nuisance. It was returned to us unclaimed. A week later, I went and hand-delivered it to the son of the owner, and they never followed through on taking care of the tree. Recently, we got some complaints that branches have started falling in the road, on the sidewalk, and so I went out to look at it. You know, there's the tree. Apparently, a car had actually gotten damaged that was parked under it. So the tree is really needs to be, the problem needs to be abated like now. So we sent another letter. I'm assuming because the last one went unaddressed that this one will too. The current, you know, ordinance 274 is basically about nuisance, you know, public nuisance. It includes trees. I don't know if you have that included in your packet. But it basically, you know, when there's a tree that's a hazard to the public way, meaning a roadway, a sidewalk, a park, that kind of thing, the town has, you know, rights and responsibilities to solve that problem. If it's a public tree, we just take care of it. If it's a private tree, we have to go through certain steps. We notify them, we give them the chance to take care of it. Should they not take care of it, section 2 of that ordinance says that the selectman or the director of public works may just go and take care of it, even on private property. But that would be at town cost. Section 3 says that if the Board of Selectmen make a motion to direct the Public Works Director to, solve the problem at the cost of the owner, then they pay for it, not taxpayers. So that's what I'm requesting. And I think my motion was written in there.
So we would lien them for the cost?
So we would, yes, we would go do the work, we would send them an invoice. Should they not pay the invoice, then we would lien their property. Should they pay the invoice, then we're done.
How far off the road is the trunk of the tree?
in feet.
12 feet, yeah,
But
Way far off.
12 feet-ish.
Jim, I know you said you haven't been getting nice responses back, or any responses. So if we cause the removal of the tree at the owner's expense, how do we get them to pay for it?
Lien on their property.
Either we invoice them, should they not pay, then we put a lien on their property.
Putting a lien on their property?
Yep,
Okay.
so we'll eventually get paid. It might be 20 years from now when the money is valueless, but at least it's something.
All right, there's a business there too, isn't there?
I don't know,
Yes.
don't know.
And that caught it as a business.
What kind?
I think it's an Airbnb, a B&B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw the tree over the weekend, after I saw your pictures, and it looks like it's just going straight up, and the limbs on the top are pretty dead now.
Yeah, it's gotta go.
Shouldn't take a lot to take it down.
He's already had it trimmed numerous times.
David, you're out of order, please.
The way I see it, it can be taken down pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not one of the more difficult trees, you know, it's not
Right.
tangled in wires or close to,
Yeah.
close to anything.
But it's hard to take
But
down
you-
because it's hazardous, because
that's-
Yeah, it's gotta be taken down.
because the people that are going up in the tree don't know when one of those branches are gonna break, so
Right.
it's gonna be a
Right.
little
No,
more
no, no, I-
expensive than just.
It's a hazardous looking tree, I understand that, and you can get a bucket in there and take it down pretty quickly. It's pretty easily accessed from
Yeah,
the road.
access
Right
is,
on the road.
access is pretty easy. You
Yeah.
do have to be careful dropping branches, so you don't damage anything below.
Yeah.
And, you know, taking down a tree that's that dead, you have to be very careful, because as you're cutting a branch here, it could break over there, causing other problems. So I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk, but tree professionals can make pretty short work of it.
Ashes are super messy,
So
and
can
they
we,
just snap.
can we, ask the, town manager to ask our enforcement agent to bring a letter over to the house before you take it down, and then, he delivers the letter, and then if he hasn't, you've made your arrangement, then I'll make the motion that you wish to order is it order you? Do we order you?
Whatever the wording was,
May at any time order the abatement of any public nuisance existing upon private property.
So we give approval to Public Works to take down the tree at 102 Williams Avenue after the enforcement officer has delivered a letter and given the opportunity for the owner to abate the tree. And if that does not happen, for the town to invoice tree removal.
Well,
It's too
Jim
much.
did send a letter on August 29th.
He's already done all those things. He's already done all those things.
He's done everything. He sent
So-
the letter August 29th to them.
Right, but if the enforcement agent brings it over in person tomorrow or the next day, then it's just one extra layer that nobody can come back and say, I didn't know when the truck shows up. Because you're gonna have to tell them when the truck's gonna show up.
14 days after the delivery.
we sent two letters, one certified.
He's come before us
And
before
one-
about this.
What's that the little white,
Return receipt?
yeah, we did the return receipt and the certificate of mailing.
Certified mail.
Yeah, certified and then a certificate of mailing as well. And
They choose to ignore it. I mean, it's just.
again, I'm assuming they're going to, I just wanna, the tree's precarious, it's hanging right over a
Yeah, yeah.
sidewalk. It's, you know, fortunately, it's off of Williams Avenue, which is where most of the walkers are, but people do walk that sidewalk, and, you know, it's, you know, I should have probably done this a year ago, but it's, you know, the time has come, you know.
The vehicle that was damaged, do you know who owns that? Is there gonna be?
Now, one of the neighbors pointed it out to me, it had a red hood on a blue car or something, and they told me that was the cause of it.
I think we ought to follow through. Get it done.
Follow the instructions and
What, do we
Should we
need a
take
motion
care?
on this?
Candy made it.
Yeah, you need to order, you need to order Public Works to, I thought I had an actual motion written on the memo.
So you
I think it's in bold on your letter dated August 31st, 2023 to the Board of Selectmen. I think you phrase it as, if I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen, I move that in the event that the owner of 102 Williams Ave, et cetera, the Board of Selectmen orders Public Works to cause the removal of the tree at the owner's expense. I think that paragraph in bold
That
at the bottom of that
as a
memo is the
motion?
motion. Just say, I move that in the event, and carry forward from there.
Yeah, I thought I put it in bold. Mike, I don't have the most recent
I
copy here.
removed my motion and replaced it with what Josh just read. Maybe Glenn could get that. You should have it, right? You might have it already.
So you're withdrawing, but you're using this one.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
What are you reading? You changing this?
Let me just, you want me to just read it into
Read-
the record?
Yeah, read it to them.
So the motion is, I move that in the event that the owner of 102 Williams Avenue does not abate the nuisance caused by the hazard tree within 14 days of notification, the Board of Selectmen orders Public Works to cause the removal of the tree at the owner's expense as authorized in ordinance number 274-3.
Second.
Discussion?
When does the 14 days start? From the date of August 31st or today?
It would have been August 31st, the
Okay,
date they were
okay.
notified. Or whatever date the mailing. went in.
The notification, the first notification went out July 16th, 2020, technically. The most recent date is August 29th, 2023. so-
August 31st, you've given
August-
this information, and so they have 14 days till
August
September
31st.
14th.
I would still have enforcement go over there tomorrow.
It's just good practice, yeah.
Sure.
Just
14
as,
days from tomorrow.
just as practice, because you gotta.
All in favor? Unanimous? Item 11, executive session to discuss the sale of town-owned land, to discuss contract negotiations, and to discuss personnel matter regarding the town manager search. Can I have a motion to go into executive session at 8:18 PM?
So,
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there a second?
second.
Thank you, Candace. All in favor?
And you said take the town manager in with us.
Taking the town manager. I believe the blue room is occupied, so probate is open.